Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast, hosted by Christen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Collide Kids Podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids Podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. I am so glad that you're listening today. Thank you so much for being here. If this is your first time listening, I just want to say welcome. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you keep coming back for more. Be sure to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, it is Memorial Day weekend, which means on Monday, we set aside time through special patriotic events and observances to honor the men and women who have died serving our country in the United States Armed Forces. It also means it's the beginning of summertime. So if you're traveling this summer, take the Collide Kids Podcast with you. After you listen to today's episode, go back and search through all the episodes and find another episode your family will enjoy together. I have met some amazing friends through this show who share about their job and the things they're passionate about, like Olympic athletes and community helpers and children's book authors, musicians, and many others. There's lots of great episodes to choose from. You can go to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, or go to my social media and find all the episodes available and pick the next episode your family will enjoy, or just scroll through and randomly hit play. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Well, speaking of friends, today we are going to be talking about friendships, which I think is something everyone has or needs work on. And so I am so excited to talk about this today with my new friend, Jeanette Tapley. She is a mother, a podcaster, producer, writer, speaker, and overall encourager. Jeanette is your ride or die friend who will always point you to God and remind you that you are not alone. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this conversation with Jeanette Tapley.
That's part of making friends, right? Is getting people introduced.
Are you really bad with names? I'm bad with names, like in public. I, from a young age, started calling people pal. Like in high school, I'd be like, "Hey, pal," and then I now say friend a lot, or I say like, "I'm so sorry." I've had to be like, really
I do
humble.
that too. I do that humility thing. I'm so sorry. I forgot your name. Tell me that again.
I know.
Yeah,
Tell me one more time.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna remember this time.
Yeah, and then I try my best.
Well, Jeanette, I am so glad to have you on the Collide Kids Podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to hang out with you.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today, especially about friendship, which is what we kind of already started talking about. But will you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I am Jeanette Tapley. I live in New Braunfels, Texas, which is like really this sweet spot. We're at the base of the hill country. We live in between Austin and San Antonio, so we kind of get like the best of Texas in all reality, but we're originally from Alaska, so my husband and I are both born and raised up there. We've been in Texas 11 years now, which is wild. My husband and I have been married for 18 years. We have 3 kids. I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. Our 12-year-old is adopted, and she's from Africa, and she's deaf, and so we are a signing family. Not only do we all look different, and my husband and my kids are very tall, we are like, you see us coming a mile away. Like, we look different, we sound different, we're flapping our hands all around. You do not miss the Tapleys coming. And my work is some of the best stuff I get to do aside from parenting and loving my kids really well. I am a podcaster just like you, and so I get to host podcasts. I have 2 of them, and then I write and speak and edit podcasts. I'm a producer, so like really my day job is sitting basically right here listening to parenting podcasts over and over and over, and some really cool, just interesting content. And that's what I do. That's who I am. It is the most fun.
I love that. And I love that you're a fellow podcaster and an editor. I'm going to need to get some tips from you for sure.
Yes. It's actually weird. I love the editing process. Really? And I don't know if it's because it's like the cleaning or if it's like it's so like there's sometimes I'm sure you've ran into like some like weird edits and like as you like cut and trim and it just like sounds seamless and you're like, am I the best?
I am so talented right now because I cleaned that. Yes, I'm with
exactly
you.
it.
Yeah. I don't feel like that's my favorite part of podcasting. I definitely love meeting people. I think that's my favorite part. Because we could just talk forever, you know, but the editing part, I'm really a stickler about it. And so when I hear bad editing or I hear other podcasts or other edited things, I'm just like, oh, they could have fixed that. You know, like I know all the ways they should have done. So yeah, I'm just picky.
Or bad audio, bad microphones, bad audio.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's so fun for me to spend so much time on it, but then there gets a point where I'm like, okay, it is what it is. And I just put it out there. So anyway, well, this is so fun. I'm excited to talk to you. But before we get into what we're talking about today, I always like to ask my guests to tell me their best joke. So do you have a joke for us today?
I do. And this is one that my sweet 16-year-old just gave me.
Okay.
And it is, what did the shark say when he ate the clownfish?
I don't know.
Tastes a little funny.
That's
so
good. It tastes a little funny because it's a clownfish.
Yeah, it tastes a little funny.
Yeah. That makes me think of Finding Nemo. And
me too.
That was one of my favorite lines when the parent fish, when Marlin swims away and they're like, you know, for a clownfish, he's not very funny. But yeah, that's one of my favorite lines in the movie.
Love that. I love that movie. That is one of the best.
Yeah, it's so good. Because we all can relate to at least one of the characters in there. You know, we're all Dory sometimes. We're all Marlin sometimes, you know.
Yes. Sometimes I feel like Bruce, like fish are friends, not food.
Yes, that's so fun. Okay, so let's talk about something that I feel like is really important in everyone's life, no matter how old you are, is making friends. And this is something that I've heard you talk about quite a bit. So I'd love to hear what you think it takes to be a good friend.
Yeah. To be a good friend means that you're looking at your friend saying, how can I love you? How can I serve you? And I know that like serve is kind of a weird word for kids. Like, what do you mean? How, like, you want me to like give them a plate and like bring it to them? And it's like, no, like, how can you show up on the playground today and say, what do you want to do? Like, that's serving your friends, offering them the first pick, offering them like, what do you want to do today? Asking them even, how are you? That is being a good friend, just being the first one to start the conversation, to start the game, to start the just the time together, just like offering them first. That is what we call serving. And I think as we get bigger, it looks a little different, right? Like in each stage of parenting, it looks different. In each stage of childhood, it looks different. So if you're little and you're going to the playground today saying like, do you want to go on the swings or the slide first? Like, which one do you want to do? That is serving our friends. And that's a really fun way to do it. And then as you get bigger, it could look like, hey, you told me you were stressed out about that test we have to take tomorrow. How did it go? Or how are you feeling today? Do you want to study together? Those kind of things really are the simple but really impactful ways that we can show up and be good friends.
Yeah, that's good. Because I think the way you want to be treated is also how you should treat others. And sometimes I think it's hard because we are waiting for the other person to do the kind thing first. But if we were to go first and say, you know what, I'm going to put their needs or their wants, I'm going to serve them first, and then you're going to receive that back.
Yeah, and there's times in friendship that you are serving and giving to your friends a lot, but then the flip side happens and you are depleted and your friends are serving you a lot. It happens in the natural ebb and flow of life. And it also, it can be really uncomfortable in both seasons where you're serving your friend and you're like, oh my gosh, trust me, we are in a season where our friends have carried us and I have felt so bad for them. I'm like, I'm sorry. We're just so needy. And my best friend always says like, it's your turn. It's your turn to be served. It'll be my turn soon. And so it's just the reminder that like we take turns. Like that is
right.
A life lesson that we learned as kids, and we just take turns loving our people.
That's good. And I always think too, when I see someone showing kindness to me or showing kindness to a person that I love, it makes an impact on my life. And I think, okay, I want to do that for someone else. So I think when you are showing that service, you might be inspiring someone else to show that love, and not even just to you, but to others, and to be an inspiration to other people.
That's right. Yeah. It's just about, it just takes it off of our plate, right? It makes it not about us.
Yeah.
And that is like the biggest lesson we learn in friendship. Like it's not always about me, and that's good. And I want to be a good friend so that I can have good friends.
Right. That's so true. So I think one of the hardest things for a lot of people is learning how to make friends. That's really, that's a tough thing that some people are really natural at it, but it still feels a little awkward. And there's some people that it's really hard for them to make friends. So what would you say to someone who really doesn't know how to make friends? We'll be right back after this. You know, raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
I think that we overcomplicate this, like we overthink it. And I think that oftentimes when we are stuck in that, like, I don't even know how to make a friend, we are not giving ourselves enough credit. And so one of the things, I talk to a lot of moms who are like, I don't know how to make friends. And I always say, like, start with a compliment. Like, if you're seeing a kid run around school and they've got some new shoes on, throw out a compliment. Everybody loves to be seen like that. And like, hey, cool shoes. Where'd you get them? Just by complimenting somebody, you're kind of knocking down that initial wall that we keep around ourselves to protect us. And as you kind of knock that down, you can step in and say, like, I really like those shoes. Where did you get them? And then you open up a conversation with that person. Yeah. And then that conversation can like be like, cool, okay, I'll see you later. And then the next time you see them, you don't always have to be complimenting, but you can be like, oh my gosh, I looked those shoes up online and they were so cool. I think I like this color best. Well, then you've created like this like teensy foundation of friendship around something that you both like. And then you just build on it. Like, hey, have you seen that show on Netflix? Or what are you reading? What'd you get on that test the other day? Just creating conversation is creating friendship. And then it can go to the next step of like, do you want to hang out? And I think that we don't realize as parents that we do this. And it's so silly to me because we are overcomplicating it, right? Well, I don't have time for friends. And I like, that's like the one thing that moms say that I'm always like, want to grab their shoulders and like, yes, you do. Like, we don't have to, we romanticize this idea of like, I have to have X amount of time. I have to have a best friend. I have to have a girl gang, all of these things. And in all reality, a few people who know us and love us well is really all we need. And so when I look at my kids and I look at their friendships, I'm like, one of the things I'm looking for is like, okay, are they including others, and are others including them? Okay, cool. Are they retreating from people? Because if they're retreating, something else is going on. And then like, are they wanting to like see their people or like check in with their people and their friends? And so I think there's just like little things that we overcomplicate as parents and as kids. And all it really does is like, it just starts with like a simple conversation. Yeah. And I think a compliment, I love to be complimented. So just like a little compliment goes a long way.
It does. And like you said, it opens up the conversation. It also creates a space for you to learn more about that person, you know? So once you start talking about shoes, then you're like, cool, what's your favorite color? Mine too. Like just finding that commonality. You know, do you like to play soccer? Oh, I love to play soccer. Or no, I don't like to play soccer either. You know, like, so just
what's your favorite football team? Like, like, do you like college or pro? Like, who did you want to win the March Madness thing? Like, those questions, like, are deep seated parts of our identity oftentimes, and you get to know somebody really well through that.
Yeah. And I love what you said earlier, that sometimes we have this expectation that we're supposed to have a best friend and we're supposed to have this big group of people that are our friends. but it's really okay if it's just a few close people. That's really great. And so removing the expectations that we're supposed to have this gigantic, group of people with us at all times kind of helps to say, okay, I have a couple friends, so that's okay. And I can also reach out and find those people around me that are looking for friendships too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have one son who has like childhood friends. He's my 16-year-old. He has friends that he's had since first grade, and they have grown up together. They have done like just many seasons of life together, and we call them the crew. Like they're just the crew. There's been seasons when they're tighter. There's been seasons when they're busier. There's been seasons they don't see each other at all. And it's like, where's the crew? What's going on? And then my middle son, he has had like one or two good friends every year. Like, I wouldn't say that he's super popular. I wouldn't say that he's like in all the friend groups, but he's just really likable amongst all groups. And so he doesn't have a lot of deep, deep friendships, but he has one really good friend. And then even in this season of high school, he's like, oh, I got invited to this. Can I go? Like, he's like, I'm making friends. Like, he's so proud of himself. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So, and then my daughter, she lives in a dorm during the week. And so she has like sisters. And so I look at all three of my kids and I see different friendships for each of them. Yeah, I see friendships among all of them. So I'm not worried about that. Our biggest concern with them is like, are you being kind and are you being a good friend?
Right. And sometimes I think that's hard for us as parents because we kind of want to help the situation. Like, hey, go play with that kid over there, but I don't know, making space for that and supporting them as they make friends, I think is good. What would you say? What would you advise parents on that? Like, should we force our kids to go make friends?
Well, I'll tell you that I'm that mom that's like, hey, that person looks really nice. You should go talk to them. And my kids are like, no, like, no. So I can't force my kids to do anything. I don't think any of us can. I know we try. Or I'll be like, hey, that person looks really cool. And then I'll find out like, well, you don't really want me hanging out with that. Like that crowd's kind of wild. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I think just being like, just asking like, what's going on with that group? Or like, even church friends, it's like, why don't you hang out with them? And it's like, well, they're kind of into like, gaming. I'm not really into that. Or just asking them like what people are into is probably better than saying like, go talk to that person. And so just like, okay, like what are you into? Okay. So you hang out with the cross country team a lot. All right. What are the other cross country guys into? And stuff like that. And so, asking what other kids are into or like what's up with them helps us as parents kind of navigate like where should you find friends.
Yeah. I think whenever I talk to my kids about their friendships, I always want to know, kind of the same thing, like what are they into, what are they doing? And I also want to make sure that they're being a good friend, but sometimes, like we deal with some girl drama or, there's neighborhood dudes that are messing with each other. And so sometimes I have to remind them, like, that sounds like that person was not being a good friend today, but it also doesn't mean, we cut them off completely. Like, let's figure out how we can work that out. And so just helping your kids kind of process some things with friendship, I think is helpful because like you said, we're the eyes, so we can kind of see into it because we've been through different experiences of our own, Were you really good at making friends when you were younger?
Yeah. And I don't think I realized how hard it was to make friends until we moved to Texas because I didn't realize that not everybody still had monthly lunches with their high school friends. Like I grew up in a really small town, really small school. I mean, I graduated with 100 kids, so it was like just really small. And so it wasn't hard for me to make friends. Like I said, like I still had monthly lunches with my high school friends until I left. And if I go home, I still see them. And it's such a gift. But when we moved, I had this realization of like, I'm going to walk into a building and not know anybody. And that is foreign. Like I could walk into a Walmart at home and be like, oh, I'll see people. Like I'll see somebody I know.
Yeah.
And that was like life-giving. Like I loved bumping into people. And so, so I'd have to like hype myself up. Like I'd go to the gym and be like, okay, you're not going to know anybody in this building, and that's all right.
Yeah.
Walk out and remembering one name. And so we did like group classes and stuff like that. So like cycle and like body pump. And so I would be like, I would ask questions. I would be like, hey, what did she say to grab? Or what? Oh my gosh, I love this song or stuff like that. Like I would just try to make conversation with people around me. And then I made a habit of going to the same class every day, because that familiarity, like you're seeing the same people, or
Yeah.
you're seeing people's patterns. And I had my little guy, my middle, because Zoe wasn't home yet. It was just before kindergarten for him, and so we stayed for Bible study at the gym. We went to MOPS groups, and so we just tried to find places that like people were in the similar stage of life as us, and then we just like continued to show up there because it's so easy to be overwhelmed and be like, I don't know anybody, like I can't do this, and then you're never going to meet anybody.
Right.
And then you're going to be sad because you don't have friends.
And you assume the group's already together. They don't need anybody else.
Yes.
Yeah. I've, there's been a couple of times where I've moved in similar locations, and I kind of use I'm new here to a default. Like,
oh yeah.
Can you tell me I'm new here? I don't know it. Like, let people
ask questions,
explain things to you, and let them, instead of trying to figure it out on your own. That's a great way to connect with people. And then they know, oh, she's brand new. She doesn't know anybody. Let me introduce you to so-and-so.
Yeah. Yeah. And even I just had a lunch with some of my girlfriends, and one of my favorite things to do, because there's like a few new people into my fold, right? So like it was my birthday party, so I invited like my people, and there's like people from different areas, you know, like different things in my life. Anyways, I made sure, like the newest one to my life, I was like, okay, here's how I met this person. Here's how I met this person. Okay, this is how I met you. Like, you just want to connect your people, because if they're walking into a new situation, you want to make sure that they feel like loved and seen. And so, yeah, I think, but it also is like that reminder of like, oh my gosh, I met this person in the weirdest way, and they are now part of my life. Like, how cool is that? And so I think that playing that new, like, I don't know what's going on, I think that's a great thing to do. I did that like at the gym all the time, and I probably do it walking into places now.
That's good. So let's think of a little bit about online friends, because well, you and I are online friends now because we're connected through this, but we're not meeting face to face, we're meeting online, and I think that's so cool. But I think a lot of times people have this expectation, especially I'm thinking of my like tweens and teens going into middle school, that you have to have all these followers and this huge friend group. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that real friendship when you have lots of friends like that?
I think there's like a statistic that says we can only have like, I think it's like 14. That might even be higher. It might be like seven or something, like close friends, people who know us really well. And so when we look at what the internet has done to us, where it's like, I have 1,000 friends, and it's like, well, how many of them do you know?
Right.
Like, no. And then how many of them actually know you? And so that's a big part of that. And so I think the internet's kind of broken us in a way.
Yeah.
And so I think that you can have really good internet friends, and I think that's totally possible. But I think that oftentimes we've neglected real life over internet, because that number is bigger and that number is shinier. But instead of like connecting in real life, because connecting in person is actually harder than connecting online. Even as authentically as I show up online, my friends online don't know what's going on like my friends in real life. You know what I mean? And so I think that there's an air of like, I can show up and show you something really pretty after I just like bawled my eyes out. Like, and I'm not going to tell you I just cried my eyes out. I'm going to tell you like this like lesson I learned from crying my eyes out, you know? So I think that, yes, that number is really fun and really cool, but connecting with people in person, it has this like authenticity that we crave.
Right. I agree. And I think, you know, like the number might be really great, but that doesn't validate us. Like how high the number is or how low the number is does not make our worth change. And, and like those people that know you in real life, that's who it should matter. Yeah. How they are interacting with you and what they think of you. So I think that's good to keep in mind. And really younger kids should not have internet friends at all, really. This is really probably just more for the parents, for us to think about and consider, and just to help our kids to prepare as they transition into getting into social media and things like that. But I love that, you know, you said that the in-person thing is so important. Like making eye contact is something I missed so bad when we were in lockdown, and you know what I mean? And we didn't have that connection with people. It was really hard because I
I'm an extrovert, so I love meeting new people and connecting with people.
Yeah. I mean, it's what Jesus did. Jesus sat with people. He didn't have an online ministry. He saw them face to face, and he walked with his 12 disciples. Like, they lived together, like they did life together. And I think as I've grown my platform and worked on my podcast and all of those things, God has brought me back over and over and over to doing ministry in my hometown, in my church, in my home. And that's just been a really solid reminder to me of like, what I do is really, really fun and good work, but nothing will beat in-person ministry.
That's so true. And connecting in that way, like just like Jesus did. What are some things you've learned from Jesus about being a friend?
One of my favorite things about Jesus as a friend was he was so kind. He's just a really good friend to his guys. And he wasn't like flowery and precious with them. He was like, where is your faith? Come on. Right. Like, I'm right here. But my very favorite thing is when Judas came to betray him, Jesus said, come do what you came to do, friend. In the moment of his betrayal, where Jesus knows, like, this is the moment that it ends. My ministry is coming to an end. He says, do what you came to do, friend. He called him a friend in that moment. And I think that changed the way I look at people who don't like me or people who I don't like. Like, if Jesus can call his betrayer a friend, and if Jesus can forgive this moment, I can forgive anything. Like, I can get past someone saying something snarky about me, or I can accept that I'm just not liked by this person. And I think it's my favorite thing when I just think of, like, when I picture the garden and I picture Judas walking up and Jesus saying, like, hey man, it's okay. Just do what you came to do. Like, nothing else could happen. The resurrection couldn't have happened if Judas had not betrayed Jesus. I mean, it could have. Right. God would have found another way. But, like, we know that from the time Jesus accepted him in, he knew Judas is going to be the one. Yeah. And he didn't treat him any differently. They still lived together. He still knew how Judas took his coffee. He still was like, as they're saying goodnight, I picture like that camp mentality, like, good night, good night, good night, good night. He's like, good night, Judas, every night. Good night, Judas, I love you. Yeah. Like, I just picture like that kind of intimacy. And then in the moment where it hurts the most, Jesus is like, hey friend, it's okay. Yeah. He could have been like, he could have said, get away from me, Satan. He said that to the other guys before.
Or
like,
sleep outside the camp.
Yeah, I don't like, I know what you're going to do. And Jesus is like, what? Yes. Yes. And so I just think that Jesus is such a sweet friend to know. And I think that if we look at that, we know people are going to hurt us. We know that there's going to be seasons of friendship that end. We know that these things don't last forever. A statistic is friendships kind of cycle through every 7 years. So we know that friendships are going to ebb and flow and change, yet we still have to stand up just like Jesus and say, like, okay, like, come on, let's do life together. And I think that is my favorite thing. I just, like, even thinking about it, it gets me like emotional and like just like giddy. Like, It's just so kind of him to be like, because I would be such a brat. I would be awful. I would be like, God, he's going to be mean to me. Right. And God's like, and? Like, come on.
Right. So, and he laid down his life for Judas just as much as he did for Peter and everyone else in that group. That's so true. Yeah. Do you watch The Chosen?
I think we're the only Christians in the world who have not seen The Chosen.
Let me recommend it. It's really great. I've actually started watching it with my kids, and we just started watching it. So we're the late ones. So you can jump on this with us. But one of the things that surprised me is, we read these stories about Jesus, especially as he interacts with his disciples. And I don't think I recognize how much Jesus probably laughed and had joyful moments. Like, one of my favorite scenes in the show is, because one of my favorite Bible stories is when Jesus calls Andrew and Peter to follow him. And they just caught this huge, massive load of fish that was about to sink their boat because Jesus told them to cast their nets. And they're like, okay, because you tell us to do it, we'll do it. So it's this miraculous moment. And it shows Jesus standing on the beach, laughing his head off as they're trying to get all the fish together. And I thought, I've never thought about Jesus laughing with his friends, you know, like he just really loved and connected with those guys. It wasn't, like you said, just flowery and he was, you know, higher
or
church
even
speaking to them.
Yeah.
Right.
He wasn't just like, I am Jesus, here I am. And it's like,
right.
no, he was charismatic. Like people were following him for a reason. And I look at those 12 and I'm just like, man, they got to know Jesus. Like that's just wild.
Yeah. They could say he was their friend.
Yeah. They were like, oh, Jesus, you're out of body wash. Do you want me to go? Like they just like knew those like little things. It's so cool.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. I'm not Jesus. So there are people that hurt me. There are people that take from me or take advantage of my friendship or my kindness. So what do I do? What do I do with that when someone's not a good friend to me?
Man, I think I was just talking to one of my kids about this because he was talking about like not altercation, but like an argument he had with a friend. And I said, is this worth losing a friendship over? Like, is this worth like walking away and just being done with this friendship? And he's like, no. I was like, okay, then it's a conversation. And I think that we are so timid to talk to our friends about stuff like this. And I don't understand why. And this is why I think that we are so kind of like confused. Friendships are relationships. And it makes me chuckle when I think, because I'm a very non-confrontational person. I'm like, oh, you just ran my foot over with the car. It's fine. It's fine. You know, like it'll be okay. Or like my feelings are deeply wounded, but I'll just stuff this under the rug. And I just don't think that does our friendships any service, because when we do that, we're not deepening a friendship. We're kind of just like letting it slide because we're too uncomfortable to have a conversation. So all of that to say, I think we have conversations with our friends. We have all these like rules in place for dating and for these kind of relationships, but we don't use those when it comes to friendships. And if a boyfriend or girlfriend was like bugging you, you would say like, hey, chill.
Right.
Like,
you would try to work it out.
Yeah. Or you'd be like, this is it. You've crossed this line too many times. I'm not going to do this with you anymore. And you would break up. And so I think that if we looked at friendships a little bit more like that, we would probably have healthier friendships and friendships that were like deeply rooted, because once you have those conversations a couple of times, it's like, it's proving that you care enough about this relationship and this person to do the dirty work.
Right. And it makes if you come out on the other side, it makes that relationship even closer, because now you know, like this is something they struggle with, or this is a mistake that they have made, and we can work it out and still like each other. Right.
Yeah. Or I was, there's been so many times where I have been too sensitive in our relationships, or I have pushed down those feelings and then erupted like a volcano and been like, ah! And instead, if I would have been like, hey, I don't feel seen here. Like my feelings are hurt. It would have been like, oh my gosh, that was not my intent at all. And then you talk it out, and it doesn't have to be so big. It can be so much more simple, just if we were to be just honest.
Yeah. And I think on the other side of that, it's okay too if you need to walk away from a friendship.
Oh,
if there's someone that's not making you the best version of you, then it's definitely worth a conversation. But if that doesn't work, you know, it's time to say, you know what, I think we're better off hanging out with other people.
Yeah. And as parents, we get to see our kids in that sense. And we've had conversations with our kids like, this person is bringing out a really bad side of you. Like, I don't like, I can see when you start hanging out with them, I can see the mistakes that you've made since. And then like, I see a pattern here. And then we kind of have to be like, tell me why you think that this is a good friendship for you. And, tell me why you're making these choices, and kind of that discipleship over friendship.
Yeah.
And then we've been really terrible. I don't know. We've been the parents that are like, this is not a friendship that brings out good in you, and you need to end it. And that's hard.
That is hard, but that's good parenting too.
You would think. We'll find out in a few years.
I'll let you know later, right? Well, Jeanette, this has been so good. I've loved talking about friendships with you, and thank you so much for sharing all of this today. Where can our listeners find out more about you and your podcast and your resources?
Yes. Okay. Well, I am on Instagram and I'm at Jeanette Tapley. And then if you're on TikTok, I'm there too, but mostly just to scroll. And then my podcast, I have two. Moms at Work is for the working mom. And then it's like that, like side eye, like we're all working moms.
That's right.
And so just a place of our encouragement for all of us moms just to continue the work that we're doing. And then It's Time for Coffee is out there as well. And that is a show that just kind of like this, like sit down with your friend and have a cup of coffee and just like chat. It's my favorite. And then if you need anything else from me, you can check my website, and that's JeanetteTapley.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show today and sharing all this. Okay, before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to share a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us today?
I do. When you asked this, I was like, oh my gosh, I can see this totally clear. And it's so kind of random. But I remember being at my grandparents' house and I was picking strawberries with my great grandma. And we were running around and I tripped on a rock, like a really big rock. And I like cut my knee open real bad. And my great grandma just so tenderly like picked me up and cared for me and bandaged it. And I remember my great grandpa being there with his walker and his suspenders. And it was just like, it's just the craziest thing that like, when you think like, what's a childhood memory? And it's like, that's the one that popped up was like my great grandma, who is known for being a little bit sassy and a little bit like sharp, was so tender and loving. And just to kind of like have that image of them both again was just really, really sweet. And I was little and that scar still is there.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, good. Oh, well, that's really sweet to think about your great grandmother. And
Yeah.
that's nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show. This was great.
So much for having me, and I just really enjoyed it.
Wasn't that so good? I loved talking with Jeanette today about making new friends. And she's right. It really all starts with being a good friend. Putting others first and learning to serve others is a great way to be a good friend. She said we should not be overcomplicating this idea of making friends. You can do it easily by starting a conversation and building a foundation on something you both like. And then you build on that and you keep getting to know each other. She also reminded us that friendships are relationships, which means we have to be willing to work things out instead of just stuffing it down and pretending like it didn't happen or always walking away. If we want healthier friendships, we have to be honest and willing to talk about the things that hurt us or the things that are not right, even if it's uncomfortable. And our friendships will be so much deeper because of it. If you'd like to learn more about Jeanette and her podcast and her resources, you can go to JeanetteTapley.com. You can also follow her on social media. She's on TikTok and Instagram, and she has some fantastic podcasts and content for moms. So I highly recommend you go to her website and check out all the good things she has to offer. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is a joke from my friend Vance.
Hello, my name is Vance. I'll be telling you a joke. How many apples grow on a tree? All of them.
That is so true. All of them. That's the number you need. That's the kind of math I like. Well, hey, if you would like to be on the podcast just like Vance was and share your favorite joke or a quote or a Bible verse, all you have to do is head over to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top that says Kids Only. That's where you can find information about how to record it, or you can send it to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. And I would love for you to follow me there if you haven't already. Hey, if you'd like to support the podcast, there's lots of ways you can do that. You can go to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top that says Buy Me a Coffee. You can also follow the podcast and subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app. And if it's possible, leave a rating and a review there. That is so helpful, and I love reading those. You can also share this episode with friends and family and let them know why you like to listen. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing summer as you're traveling. Don't forget to take the Collide Kids podcast with you. And in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thanks for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between, and all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.